It is with great joy that I'd like to introduce the NAT64Check presentation. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Zorz. Thank you for a nice introduction. I'm from Slovenia, so I just flew in yesterday. And basically, this is the first time this version of presentation will be presented. It's sort of like a premiere for us. We worked on it yesterday at dinner late, so you know, it's the first time it will be here. Okay, so a little bit of a background to give you some images and words about how it all happens. I travel a lot around the world. I work for Internet Society, and that also usually implies going to meetings all around the world, meeting with operators. I also have an operational background. I started building networks in '91, where there was even not UTP, but you know, old times, RS-232 and old networks. And I also started working with IPv6 in '97, when I downloaded the IPv6 patch for my Solaris 2.5.1 box and just was able to connect to 6-bone and ping the machine on the other end, and that was like a big success. And since then, never looked back. And during all these years, trying to talk to people about deploying IPv6, now the deployment finally started happening. The traffic is growing, but also the issues that people have started to surface, basically, because now it's being used, right? It's like 25% of traffic coming to Google services is IPv6. And with that, we need to flesh out some issues. So I always ask people, what are the burdens? What are things that are bothering you? What are your problems when you're deploying IPv6? And out of that question, when I see the pattern, we usually start working on some document like I don't know, IPv6 requirements for ICT equipment, that is a RIPE document, or a troubleshooting for help desks, that is also RIPE document, or things like this. But for this particular one, many mobile operators that are looking into deploying IPv6 started asking me, is there a test, is there a tool that we can test how our users would see the content if we put them behind NAT64 and DNS64? So we enable IPv6 only on the mobile data connection, but we don't know how their user experience will be. So I thought, well, okay, right? It's a challenge, right? Yes, we need a tool that would actually show you how your content looks like from different environments, and I will come to that later. So first of all, I set up in my lab. I'm also running the Go6 lab in Slovenia. That's just a bunch of devices. Well, Sander calls it a systematic chaos. It looks like the picture that we had before with all these cables. It's like similar thing. I will not repeat similar picture. And then we said, okay, everybody from around the world can use this NAT64 and DNS64 to test the applications, to test how it looks like, how NAT64 works. Because I used, for NAT64 prefix, I used the globally routable prefix. So you can just set as your DNS recursive server, if you have IPv6, my DNS servers back in my lab, and then you will start shipping traffic for IPv4 to Slovenia. There it will be translated, and then you can test how it all works and applications, how they work, how they behave in IPv6 only environments. And when I was looking a little bit what was going on in these test beds, I started noticing that there are crazy things going on, right? That people is actually doing crazy things on the internet, would you imagine? So let me walk you through all the 6 degrees of my inner turbulence. Have you ever seen these things in the Quad A record? This actually happens on the internet. There is people that actually says, oh, I will add the Quad A record because I want to be IPv6. And then they add column. Well done. Or column 1. The local host. Yes, I enjoy talking to myself. Really. Or column FFF and IPv4 address. Or something crazy like this. Or, huh? Yeah, but usually it doesn't go very far. It doesn't work. It breaks. Because the translators for this are long dead. Yeah. So, and don't tell me for the last one that person did not copy paste from the documentation, because that's a documentation prefix, right?
Small remark. If you disagree with any of the content, step to the microphone so our remote viewers can enjoy your question or snark. Thank you.
All right. So, if you're on IPv6 only connection and you have NAT64, you have DNS64 to synthesize the Quad A records, if there are no Quad A records, they synthesize for you the Quad A record and then they diverse you to the translation mechanism, and then that's how you get to the IPv4 content. But the problem here is that the DNS64 then actually gets the Quad A record and they go like, oh, okay, there is IPv6. So they just pass through, and you on IPv6 only phone, you just get column or column 1. There is no way you can get to the content with this error, right? And then I said, well, let's build something that would test for some stuff. Let's do the initial tests. So and then the process started. It was really like falling into the infinity at the beginning, because I just started. I'm not a coder. I must admit, this is a confession. I'm not a programmer. I was a sysadmin and then NET admin and then became IPv6 and everything. But no, I was never a coder. But I know how to do simple stuff in bash scripts. So I put together a prototype. And then I showed it to Sander. He's smiling back there. And then he said, okay, I see what the prototype is supposed to do, but sir, step back from the keyboard. And before I stepped back from the keyboard, I pressed delete. So there is no evidence of the version 0. But yeah, there was a version 0. And basically probably that persuaded Sander to volunteer to code the first version in Python, and Karine, I hope you're watching. Hi Karine, hugs. His girlfriend, she did the user interface, because probably Sander and me would not be able to put something appealing to your eyes together. It would be like a white page with a text New Roman thing like we always do. Yeah, so Sander volunteered actually. And wrote the code. So we did lots of testing, lots of discussing things, what kind of tests we can put on. We did the first design that it showed lately was not the smartest one to have, but we had to start with something. And then when we had the tool, then things started really to fall into the infinity. So the good. For example, this is our website, go6.si. If you go to first version of the tool, we have 2 instances currently running. It's a NAT64Check.go6lab.si and NAT64Check.test IPv6 lab. You just type in your URL and press the button. And don't press the button again. Don't reload. It's quite a process, because the central machine sends in to different machines in different environments, the request, and then these machines are basically request the content, render the content, and then reports back to the central machine, and then basically what you see here is this is how it's seen from NAT64. This is IPv4 only, and this is IPv6 only. And the tool actually compares the images, compares all the elements that loads, and basically tells you if your content is seen the same from 3 different environments, or if you broke something. Yeah, it's actually the mirror of what you have done on the internet. It's the mirror of your presence on the internet, seen from different environments. Well, we have, our government, they implemented IPv6, but it is not seen well from his instance, but it's seen well from my instance. But it's the mirror, right? It's how it's seen from them. And then the ugly. So here, for example, if you go to foxnews.com, that's still the mirror. You can see that IPv6 only is seen. No, IPv4 only, it looks okay. But for IPv6 only and NAT64, it breaks severely. So, but then down the page there is more information about what breaks, about is this the path MTU discovery, path MTU issue, or what is it? So there is much more information. So it's quite an extensive tool to actually debug what's wrong with your IPv6 implementation in your network, because then you are seen from the outside. What are the flaws, right? And let's talk about, because we figured out that there are some flaws. With version 1, it was quite unclear what the cause of failure is. Okay, because I was part of the team that built the tool, so I could figure out from the information what's wrong. But for somebody that is not even very familiar with IPv6, they had no idea. There was like lots of information. It's like, whoa, how do we interpret this stuff? So we needed to fix that. To fix that, that was bad error detection. 2 different systems from 2 vantage points and no coordination between them. So it's time to change the seasons and build a new version. And because Sander did all the heavy lifting, would you like to explain how all this thing works? There we go.
I'll try.
You try.
So for those who have used the tool, you might have noticed that sometimes you request a test and it just doesn't do anything because the backend has crashed and there's no alerting to actually tell us that. So once in a while we discover it's broken again and reboot the damn thing. But you know, that's not a good way to run a service. So we actually designed a completely new system. And that system is actually completely distributed. We actually have multiple parts, coordination between the different setups. So we have a central web interface where you can go to, you can say, oh, I want this URL tested, both from Slovenia and from the Netherlands and from the US. And I would like to have it tested every week. And if there's any problems, I want to receive alerts that things have broken. So you can start using it as a monitoring system. We try to get as many test locations as possible. So we already have a couple of volunteers. So once this is all up and running, we will have 4 or 5 different vantage points around the world from where the website can be tested. Can be important if you're using CDNs, where one location might go to a completely different data center than another location. And we actually packaged it so if anybody wants to run an instance, it's really easy. It's just one VM. All the testing is done within Docker containers. So it just spins up some Docker containers and runs the tests. So we made it easier to maintain, easier to monitor, all of these things. We're also, of course, thinking about new tests. We've seen problems where the IPv6 website works, but you get SSL certificate errors, all kinds of crazy things. And actually one of the requests we got recently is to keep track of all the failed domains, all the domains where we see that somebody put some crap in the DNS which doesn't make any sense. And we're actually working with some DNS resolver implementers to import that list into a blacklist, like whatever these domains tell you, don't trust their v6 data, just synthesize the NAT64 records. So you can actually do some filtering on a DNS server and avoid the broken stuff for your customers. Because this test has two sides. One is for the website operators to check how their website would look from different vantage points. Another request we got was from people saying, I would like to deploy NAT64 in my network, but I don't know what will break for my users. So this can work both ways. And if you put some important sites in the test, if something goes wrong, they automatically get added to a blacklist on your DNS server, which will then bypass the broken v6 and make sure that your users can access it over v4. So all of these things is what we decided to work on. So as Jan said, a bit of a systematic chaos, but it's actually pretty well designed, I think. There we are. We use some familiar names in the naming scheme of the different components. We have Zephod at the top, the president of the galaxy. We have some trillions underneath which run the different test locations. And of course, all the menial work is done by Marvin. So yeah, we realized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime project. Like we did version 0, we did version 1, but now if we actually want to deploy this and make it reliable, we had to get it right. So it's a very extensible setup, very flexible. So, and like I said, one of those locations is just one VM that you can just run somewhere. And that way we hope to get many more people involved in testing all those websites. So, some screenshots from the implementation. One thing we did is actually add country selection, where you can say like, oh, I want to run this test from these different countries, from these different locations. So instead of going separately to one website in the Netherlands and a different website in Slovenia, you just have one dashboard, can run one test from multiple locations simultaneously, and it will actually compare the results from the different regions. So that's I think a pretty astonishing feature, that you can actually see if your website breaks in different regions of the world. Also better feedback while testing. One of the things, like Jan said, people keep hitting reload because it takes a long time for the results to show up. So we actually build in some feedback so you can see what's happening with the test, how far is it, and stuff like that. Simple things, but yeah, very useful. Now to give you a bit of an overview. These are actually scrolling slides. Animations. So this is the view you get from the whole test. If you run a test from multiple locations, this is what you'll see. So there's the basic test information. It gives you a global overview of all the images, how they compare, the resources, whether your images or style sheets or things like that are loading or not, loading times, geographically stuff on the map, and actually background information, a clear summary of what is detected, what's going on, with a download link where you can actually download the images and the log files and everything, so you can actually see what it's doing. Behind the scenes, it's using Chromium, so it's a real Chrome browser that actually visits those websites. And all the logs you can download include the resource logs, which components, CSS, JavaScript, whatever, is loaded from where, what the request headers were, what the response headers were. You get the JavaScript log from the browser. So if somebody actually wants to debug problems, there's a lot of information you can download from here. Of course, on the website, we just give you a user-friendly summary, but for the technical people, there is a downloadable package as well. So yeah, some scenes from our memories. This is the detailed view if you actually go to one test location, and here you can actually see the different images just like in version 1. So V4 image, NAT64 image, the V6 image. The resource matched, you can actually expand it so you can see each and every image and resource loaded. And again, what DNS records we saw, what loading times we saw, ping distribution diagrams, and again, a summary of what the specific feedback was from this test location. So this is basically what it's starting to look like. So yeah, that's pretty majestic, if I may say so myself. Then the feature that Job made us promise to include, recurring tests and alerts. He threatened that if we wouldn't include it, we wouldn't get the speaker slot. So yeah, so if there's a dramatic turn of events, you actually get an alert, you get an email saying, watch out, last week your website was perfectly fine on IPv6, but you did something that broke it. So this is, because we've seen things, really stupid things, like somebody has a perfectly running dual stack website, and then they move the server to somewhere else. They change the V4 address in the DNS, but they don't change the V6 address. So the V6 address keeps pointing at the old website. In the beginning, when it's a copy, people don't even notice because the old and the new one are still the same. But after some time, you start noticing that people on V6 get a very outdated website, which slowly starts breaking as resources disappear from the internet. This is stuff that we see every week. So things like this, to keep testing, keep checking if everything is still okay is really important. So we also include some background information. We actually, one of the complaints we got was that you get some numbers, you get some information, but there's very little explanation of what those numbers mean, what they do, what they're for. So yeah, to guide the train of thought for people, we actually are including, okay, of course this screenshot is just a mock-up. We're not including the same text item 6 times. But yeah, so we're going to include lots of background information to help people debug their problems and make sure that the V6 websites are stable. So, as Jan said, we started with some images and words. This is actually who to blame if something breaks. So the front end, my girlfriend did the design. One of the companies that I do work for, Internet Bureau Max, is doing the whole front end development. And I built the back end for that. The middle bit, Trillion, is all my fault. And the Marvin, the actual tester that runs Chromium and does all the tests, the initial implementation was done by Stephen Hunlu, but he had to stop because of time constraints at some point. So also there, if anything breaks, I'm the final one to complain to. So yeah, we had quite an interesting team to work on this one. And this was all made possible by ISOC. They actually sponsored the project, gave us some money to run the infrastructure, to develop the software. So many thanks to them. The original plan was to have this version up and running in January. So we're running a little late, but any day now. Really, I promise. Thank you.
Well, I think it's astonishing that they dared present in this dreamy theater without having finished the specific feature I requested. So it's music in progress, so to speak.
Exactly.
Enough with the funs. Any questions for these two gentlemen?
Ralph Delmont, NL Labs. The upcoming release of Unbound will have the DNS64 ignore quad A option, which basically does what you described. So for those domains, we ignore the quad A records, always use the A records to synthesize. So I'm happy to receive the blacklist you have to see if we can make it easy to import those domains in Unbound.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we got a note from Benno that Unbound is now accepting the list of the Quad A records that it should ignore in the DNS64. Well, in my previous version of presentation, I put in usually a slide with the configuration code for bind and unbound, with sort of like what's the clause? It's ignore prefixes. But yeah, it's better that we also do the Quad A ignore list. That's an awesome feature. Thanks to NLNet Labs.
Marco van den Akker, ThinkWorks. You're now focusing on websites, applications, IoT devices, anything with an IP is upcoming in this new 10 decade. Is that in your part of your roadmap?
Well,
Well, we're focusing on services. So we are, for example, thinking about checking mail servers as well at some point. Yeah, the project is really about testing online services. Testing devices is not something that would fit in the scope here.
so what we built here with version 2 is a very good framework. So we will also ask when the whole thing is finished and published, in a couple of days, any day now. We will ask the community if they can offer us as many vantage points around the world and volunteer to run a server. We just need the VM with V4 and V6, and then Ansible will do the rest of the magic and install the whole thing. It's run in Docker containers, so you don't have to worry. But the point of this tool is that we test these things from as many vantage points around the world as possible. And when we have this framework, we can add many different services checks. For example, DNSSEC. Is the domain of this URL, if it's signed with DNSSEC, is it valid? Does it work? Are there any issues? I don't know. Lately, when I switched to elliptic curve signing, I encountered so weird issues that you would not even imagine if you would not go there. But these are things that we need to discover. So we will add on things, but as Sander pointed out, this is for online services that are reachable over the internet.
A couple of years I helped a small company called AppDynamics with building their global footprint on the same principle. So I'm happy to assist you to find those peers worldwide. And I also would like to contribute with our company to your project. So
thank you very much.
Much appreciated.
Last two questions.
Sorry. James Rice, Chip Networks. I was a bit confused by one of the terminologies in the errors that you were giving. It was something along the lines of broadcasting an invalid IPv6 address.
That's just placeholder text by the designer.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Hi, Peter Lexus, Power DNS. Thanks for this. The list of broken domains or prefixes, will you be publishing that publicly, or will it be on an invite-only basis?
No, we will just be publishing that on the website. Just going to be a text file, just one domain per line, and that's it.
All right, wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah, but we will probably make some sort of distinction, because there are many ways how a service can fail. For example, sometimes people put in a valid Quad A record, and then you cannot even ping a machine, or sometimes you can ping a machine, but the web server is not responding. So in this case, you need to decide as a admin of your recursive resolver if you want to include also those, because maybe there is a mail server that is running and it is using Quad A record, but the web service is not running. So you need to understand which ones are really to ignore and which ones are generically completely broken, so they must be ignored for everybody.
So there will be several lists.
It's still under process of deciding and designing things. So, but we welcome all the feedback possible, so we are not building this for us. We're building this for all of you. So
Any other feedback?
we welcome feedback.
During beer.
Say again?
I'm cutting you off.
Okay.
Give it up. Thank you very much.